Clerk will call the roll.
Glenn Whitley, County Judge.
Here.
Roy Charles Brooks, Commissioner Precinct 1.
Present.
Andy H. Wynn, Commissioner Precinct 2.
Here.
Gary Fickus, Commissioner Precinct 3.
Here.
J.D. Johnson, Commissioner Precinct 4.
Here.
Constitutes a quorum.
Thank you. Our invocation today will be delivered by Reverend David Kurtz from St. Luke Cumberland Presbyterian Church in Fort Worth. After the invocation, please remain standing for our pledges.
Let us pray. O God, our governor, your glory shines in all that you have created. You have made each one here in your image, and you know our inmost thoughts. Bless us now, O Lord, as your Holy Spirit might work in and through us, that your grace might overflow from our hearts, that we might serve you well, even as we serve our community. As we lift our eyes to you, O Lord, grant us vision to seek the good of our community. Search our minds and grant us wisdom. Capture our hearts and grant us assurance that your will is better than our own. O Christ, watch over this body. Shield them from discord and strife. Enable them to go about their duty honorably and bravely. In the strong name of Jesus we pray. Amen.
Amen. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Honor the Texas flag. I pledge allegiance to thee, Texas, one state, under God, one and indivisible. Thank you, Reverend. Good morning.
Good morning. How are you this morning?
Great. Good morning.
Just one announcement. We are not going to have to go into closed session today.
Oh, good. Wonderful.
Thank you.
Court members, you have before you the minutes of our regular meeting of May the 21st. Move approval. Second. A motion is second. Any discussion? Please vote. Okay. Commissioner Fickus and Commissioner Johnson. Motion passes unanimously. We have a couple of presentations this morning. The first is a certificate of appreciation. Mr. Meadows, would you please come forward? I'm going to read this into the record. Whereas in 2008, Texas Governor Rick Perry appointed Bill Meadows to the Texas Transportation Commission, and whereas during his tenure on the Transportation Commission through 2013, he played an essential role in key transportation projects increasing the mobility of North Texas and helping to direct $16 billion in transportation improvements to the region. And whereas his efforts have improved the quality of life for all Texans through his advocacy and support for the North Tarrant Express, the DFW Connector, the 28-mile Chisholm Trail Parkway, the extension of Highway 360 South to 287, Tower 55, and the expansion of I-35W. You found someplace where you could actually work. And whereas his commitment to find creative solutions has improved the ability of the state to partner with local entities to deliver transportation initiatives, and whereas his work as a member of the Texas Transportation Commission is a continuation of his longtime commitment to public service as Vice Chair of the North Texas Tollway Authority, a member of the Texas Water Development Board, a Fort Worth City Council member, and Mayor Pro Tem, now therefore be it resolved that we, the Commissioners Court of Tarrant County, do hereby honor and recognize William W. Meadows for his business leadership and service to the community and his outstanding contributions to improving transportation in our area. And I'll move its approval.
Second.
Please vote. Motion passes unanimously. You know, you have many traits, I understand. One of them is trivia, which really doesn't surprise me at all, based upon some of the conversations we've had and the endless amount of meaningless information that you can come forward with. But I cannot tell you how much I appreciate your service to Tarrant County. I guess since going on the NTTA, and I know long before that, you have done this county and this region a tremendous service. And you found ways to bring folks together that are not easy. And you've been able to keep the peace among folks, and that's not easy a lot of times. And so this is a small token of our appreciation for what you've done. She's with us too, huh?
I guess so.
Before Mr. Meadows,
You don't put me in front of a microphone and expect me not to speak, do you? I mean, I can't imagine that could be the case. I'd be most disappointed, as I know you would be.
before you get your word in,
Oh, wait a minute.
I'm sitting
Excuse
up
me.
here.
Yes, sir, you are. I
You
do
stand
see that.
on there.
Commissioner.
We're moving from this way.
All of that public service stuff, that's good stuff. And it certainly lends itself toward proving that you have lived your life well. But all of that public service stuff aside, I want to thank you for being a friend. We go back so many years. In fact, you were in high school with my sister. And our family.
Let's don't talk about
So
that.
one of y'all's real old.
Okay, they got something going on.
You probably shouldn't get into that.
Our families have been intertwined for so many years that I hate to mention it. But through it all, you've been a friend.
Thank you.
And I appreciate that. My Generation Hope kids appreciate that because you serve on our board of directors. And there are so many things that could have been pointed out this morning that there's not room on a plaque to inscribe. So for all of those things, thank you.
Thank you.
Well, I want to say
Thank you.
just a couple quick comments. Bill, I have only known you for a short time. And you have made a huge impact on my impression relating to public service. You helped and you advocated for one of the most important projects in Tarrant County. While everybody was telling me that it could not be done, you told me the opposite. And I really do appreciate your candor, and I appreciate your frankness, and most of all, I appreciate your ability to let your action speak louder than your words. And I hope that we will continue to have the opportunities to work together on bigger and better projects in the future. I hope this is not the end of Mr. Meadows' career, right?
Thank you very much.
Bill, I just want to thank you for all the times I picked up the phone and called your office, and it was like, it wasn't like, yeah, you can get in to see him in a week or two. It was like, can you come now? And I really appreciate your service to the state of Texas and to the Metroplex. You have truly made a difference, truly made a difference, a huge difference.
Well, you should be thankful.
Outlive all of us, obviously, and you've left some huge shoes to fill. So
Well, out of the
Appreciate it.
Out of the 16 billion, you got 9. So you should be thankful.
And you got the other 7. So.
The other 7 is.
But Bill, I appreciate knowing you for many years.
Yeah.
The same thing when you served on the city council, I could pick up the phone and call you then. I appreciate what you've done for this county, the citizens of the state, quite frankly, and just keep up the good work.
Thank you
Whatever
very much.
you do.
I certainly do appreciate it. And thank you very much for this recognition. I really do appreciate it. And the only comment I really would have to make, and I promise this will be brief, and that is what a privilege it has been to have served on the Transportation Commission and the other public positions you talked about. What we all know, and I know you all know this very well, and that is it truly is a privilege to serve, and you all show it in your actions. And I'll tell you, when we talk about the sort of successes we've had in advancing transportation infrastructure in this region over the last 5 years, to the tune of billions of dollars, advancing projects that I'm not even sure we thought were even possible that we could advance, but we all focused and worked together, and that is the key. And I think about each one of you, projects that we have been directly involved with over the last 5 years that we saw move forward significantly. And Commissioner Brooks, the Chisholm Trail Parkway, the county's participation in that as a partner, you think about it would not have happened without the partnership between the RTC, between the City of Fort Worth, between you, Tarrant County, and TxDOT and the NTTA as the lead agency. Andy, think about how far we've come in seeing 360 become closer and closer to a reality. Judge, the list is long. You mentioned them. I mean, you and I talk twice a week for the last, I don't know how many years, and to good effect. I think that's the important thing to say. Gary, you think about the projects that we've worked on, from high-speed rail to other rail projects, to all those projects that were just mentioned a moment ago, many of which are in that precinct you represent. Your focus on transportation, and in fact this entire Commissioner's Court focus on transportation and the recognition of the importance of it really does play well. JD, 199. You look at the sort of improvements that are gradually taking place, and I know that has been a real focus and interest and of real importance to the people you represent. And in each one of these projects, the multitude of projects that we've moved forward, every one of you all have been partners. And every one of you all have been partners with great effect, and it really has made a difference for the people that we all serve. And again, it's a privilege to serve, and I appreciate the recognition. Thank you.
Well, one of the things we've already talked about, and
I got to go.
I'm not going to, you're not leaving anywhere yet. His office was insistent upon us finding something for him to do because they were already getting a little tired of being back at home. But, one of the things that we still do need to look at, and Bill and I have already talked a little bit about this, and hopefully we'll be able to move forward and he'll be able to maybe lead us in that direction, is funding for other projects, because we all know of the lack of funding that the feds and the state really have right now. And we've got to look for some place within to help leverage and do things. And I think there were some bills passed in this last session of the legislature that may help with that. But, hopefully Bill will be able to help us as we begin looking for other innovative ways to kind of fund projects within Tarrant County and within the region. And just as you said, I've run off a list of 199 and 287s and 377s and
absolutely.
35s and 121s, and there's any number of roads that we still need to look at and focus on, and I'm looking forward to you moving to that next stage, so that next time when we give you a plaque, it won't include all those past things. It will just include the future things that you're going to do for us. But we really do thank you.
Well, thank you very much. You know where to find me. Thank you all.
This next proclamation is for Migration Week, and I'm going to ask Bola Katari from Catholic Charities Refugee Services to come forward. And I know there's a big group of folks out there, so would y'all all please stand just so that we can recognize you. Good. And I'm going to take this point of personal privilege to introduce my daughter-in-law, Casey Whitley, who works there and is the Director of International Foster Care for Catholic Charities, and thank you all for being here. And let me read this into the record. Whereas the United States was born as a nation of immigrants striving for ideals of freedom, justice, and opportunity, and whereas 1 out of every 200 people in this world at this time is in danger of being killed, harmed, or forcibly displaced while striving for these very ideals, and whereas Tarrant County has honorably welcomed many of these displaced people, giving them a safe place to start a new life for themselves and their families, and whereas Catholic Charities Immigration and Refugee Services has worked to empower immigrants and refugees in this community to begin their lives based on their newfound freedom, justice, and opportunity. Now, therefore, be it resolved that we, the Commissioners Court of Tarrant County, do hereby proclaim May 28th through 31st, 2013, as Migration Week in celebration of our country's continued commitment to freedom, justice, and opportunity for all people, and in recognition of the many contributions made by newcomers to our community. In witness whereof, we've heretofore set our hands and caused the seal of Tarrant County to be affixed this 28th day of May, 2013, and I'll move its approval.
Second.
Please vote. Motion passes unanimously. Would you like to make any comments?
My name is Paula Khatri. I work as a case aide for Catholic Charity Fort Worth, and I'm very honored to be one of a client for Catholic Charity who have been resettled me like 4 years ago. I came as a refugee from Bhutan to U.S., and the agency Catholic Charity has been resettled for me, and they did a tremendous and good work to the refugees, how they resettle the refugees. They have a kind of different program in Catholic Charities, like first we resettle the client from RMP, we call it Receipts and Placement, and we have a different program called Case Management, Migrant, ESL, Employment. And we have the client to be a self-sufficient within the given time frame so that the client will be on their own stand. And really appreciate all the hard work with the co-worker and what does the Catholic Charity do for our client to become self-sufficient. So I'm here with the Catholic Charities, and now I have my own house, and that's what the Catholic Charity does for all the client. And that there are a lot of challenges that we face with the client, culturally, language, and the communication barrier. So all we help with the client with the very hard work to stand on their own to be a self-sufficient. So I really appreciate what Catholic Charity does for our client.
Thank you.
Thank
Commissioner Wynn, I know, has been a
Yes, sir.
tremendous supporter of Catholic Charities and beneficiary.
I was a former client and now a loyal supporter of Catholic Charities. The first house that I lived in Latonia, Kentucky, on Church Street, right across the street from Holy Cross Catholic, was provided to my family by Catholic Charities. Monsignor Finn would come and visit my family on a monthly basis, and he would carry a sack with him, and in it were usually cheese and bread and food and milk and so forth. And he had done that for about 2 years straight until we were able to stand on our own feet. And I'm forever grateful of the services, of the work of Catholic Charities. And what I love about the services is not a handout. It was never done in that approach. It was always in a empowering, a hand-up kind of approach. And I really, really, really appreciate it. Without Catholic Charities, I'm not sure I would be able to be here today. So, thank you.
Why don't we get another picture? If you would like, why don't you go down and present the plaque? Because I think that would, or have another picture.
I would love to. I would love to. Sure. We'll do it again. Where are you from again?
I'm from Bhutan.
Bhutan.
Okay. I came as a refugee 4 years ago.
Me too.
Thank you.
We've been shot at several times.
I'm telling you, life when you come to U.S., there's a lot of expectation from time that it's not that easy.
hardships in America is a cakewalk.
Y'all are both going to have to look at the camera at the same time and quit talking to one another.
Thank you. Thank you.
Now, if you're not careful, you're going to get a reputation as a politician because you want to say something else, right?
Actually, I don't have that politician idea at all, So,
Thank you very much
Thank
for
you.
being here today.
Thank you so much.
We appreciate it
Thank
very
you.
much. It's a great story, and Catholic Charities is doing great work for our community, not only in this particular area, but in many other areas, including transportation and a lot of other activities. And they're working with all agencies and other providers. It's not, it's not exclusive to just them. So we appreciate everything that y'all do. Commissioner Fickus, I believe you have a proclamation for Memorial Day.
And we presented it yesterday. It's a proclamation for on Memorial Day at Mount Olivet Cemetery at the Doughboy and American GI statues. And had a great turnout, and we represented the county, and we presented our proclamation. And they had a great time, and then they went and had a naval ceremony where they drop a wreath.
They're over the Trinity.
Into the Trinity River, and so it was a good day.
I'll second.
Please vote. Motion passes unanimously. Commissioner Johnson, I believe you have a proclamation.
I do, Your Honor, for Lynn Forney Young Day. If you would read that into the record, please.
You bet. Whereas Lynn Forney Young, a member of the National Society Daughters of the American Revolution for over 35 years, has upheld DAR's timeless mission to promote historic preservation, education, and patriotism through service to God, home, and country. And whereas she served with honor and distinction as state regent of the Texas Society Daughters of the American Revolution from 2006 to 2009, which led her to the election as honorary regent of the Texas Society DAR. And whereas Lynn Forney Young has earned the respect and admiration of DAR members throughout the country while serving on the National Board of Management as Recording Secretary General from 2010 to 2013. And whereas when elected to the high office of President General at the Continental Congress in June 2013, she will be the first Texan to serve as head of the National Society DAR during its 123-year history. And whereas DAR members of District 2, with pride and deep affection, will honor Lynn Forney Young on June the 1st with a high tea reception at historic Thistle Hill as an expression of their love and appreciation for her outstanding DAR leadership and dedication. Now, therefore, be it resolved that we, the Commissioners Court, do hereby proclaim June 1st, 2013, as Lynn Forney Young Day in Tarrant County, and do congratulate her on her remarkable accomplishments. In witness whereof, we heretofore set our hands and cause the seal of Tarrant County to be affixed this 28th day of May, 2013.
I'll move for its approval.
Second.
Please vote. Motion passes unanimously.
And I'd like to ask my good friend Joyce Evans to join me at the podium to receive this proclamation.
Long time no see. How are you? Good. I'm really good. Good to see you. Okay.
Let's turn around.
Turn around.
I understand you wanted to frame this.
Yes.
Yes.
Would you appreciate
Any
this?
comments you'd like to
Yes,
make?
I'd like to.
Good morning.
Good morning. Good to see all of you. I was a longtime constituent of living in Precinct 4, and I do appreciate J.D. Johnson as a commissioner, and now Roy Brooks is our commissioner. We got same place, but we got redistricted.
Best of both worlds.
Best of both worlds. So I do thank you for this. It will be framed and displayed prominently at High Tea on Saturday. We're very proud of this and do appreciate your support for it. Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Court members, you now have before you the consent agenda.
Move approval.
Second.
We have a motion and a second to approve the consent agenda. Please vote. Motion passes unanimously. Public hearings.
Good morning.
Good morning.
Good morning.
Requesting the Commissioners Court conduct a public hearing to consider Amendment Number 2 to the Program Year 2012 Consolidated Action Plan. The purpose of the amendment is to transfer $6,115 from the MHIS system to rapid rehousing activities. It's a technical amendment. When we put together our plan, we didn't have our allocations yet. So in the next few months, you're probably going to see more of these type of amendments. So we're here to receive public input. If you have any questions, let me know.
I will open the public hearing at this time and ask if there's anyone here wishing to speak to this matter.
I've got a question.
Okay, let me go ahead and close the public hearing, and then we'll.
Cool.
There appearing to be none, then we will close the public hearing, and I will open it to questions from the court.
Is the HMIS system complete?
Yeah, this is our bills that we received from the Homeless Coalition, and we've made adjustments. We had budgeted more than what we were billed for, so we're reallocating that to rapid rehousing.
So the HMIS system is not being disadvantaged by this action?
No, we had budgeted too much, basically.
All right, thank you.
Is there any action at this time?
There's no action at this time. We'll come back and submit the amendment.
Mr. Manius.
Thank you, Your Honor. Members of the Court, we have two items remaining yet this morning on our agenda. The first one, we're requesting that the court accept a check in the amount of $11,880.76 from the Texas Urban Counties Local Government Corp. as Tarrant County's prorated share of distributed retained earnings for 2012. This relates to a facility that we jointly own. It's located at 500 West 13th Street in Austin.
Move approval.
Second.
Our motion is second. Any discussion? Please vote. Motion passes unanimously.
I might make one comment as it relates to that. We contributed, along with other counties, our portion was about $426,000. With this, we've now received $126,000 back of that facility.
And the property is appreciated.
Absolutely.
Significantly.
Members of the Court, if we could go to item number 2, I'm going to ask Ms. McMillan to address the Court at this time.
Good morning.
Good morning.
Good morning.
Back in 2002, the Commissioners Court approved participation in the Fort Worth TIF number 4, which we call the Southside TIF, and contributing 100% of our increment into that TIF fund until a maximum of $4 million had been reached. And the hospital district approved a similar agreement at 100% contribution until a maximum of $3.5 million had been reached. The funding through that original plan was intended to pay for approximately $45 million in public improvements within the zone, and an additional $15 million in educational facility improvements were also to be paid for through a portion of the ISD's tax increment. Both the county and hospital district will reach their maximum participation amount this year with the payment we make for tax year 2012. The City of Fort Worth, Southside TIF District, they made a presentation to the court at the end of last year proposing a modification to the project plan that would add about $45 million in project funding to the TIF district. So it would raise the total funding projects to about $90 million through the TIF. The TIF has 9 years remaining on it, and they'll be able to achieve this funding level by within those 9 years that are remaining. With the amended project and financing plan, it would raise the county's maximum participation from $4 million to approximately $8.51 million, and the hospital district's maximum amount from about $3.5 million to $7.35 million. But at the same time, it lowers our participation rate to 50%, where we're contributing 100% now. and that would be for the remainder of the 9 years. Paul Payne is here to address the court if you have any questions, but we're asking today for you to approve the amendment number 1 to the participation agreement between the City of Fort Worth and Tarrant County, and a similar amendment number 1 to the participation agreement between the City of Fort Worth and the County Hospital District for modification to the TIF zone project and financing plan, increasing the total increment to be paid into the zone, and reducing the percentage increment to be contributed annually.
What kind of leverage have we gotten on our investment in the TIF district?
Obviously, we've already paid in around $4 million, and the hospital district has paid in $3.5, and they've already funded about $45 million worth of projects. So, but I'll let them talk about what kind of investments are made. You have your glasses on.
For the county, through tax year 2011, the county has paid in $3.6 million to date. The TIF itself whole has gained 110%. So your participation of the 3.6 has been a huge contribution in driving that, but I think we're the most successful out of the, I think there's 14 active TIFs in the city of Fort Worth right now. I think we have been the most textbook in doing exactly what it is. On the projects holistically, we average right around 10%, meaning for every $1 of TIF contributed to incentivize a private project, we have generated $10 investment back over the years. Last year, so this is somewhat dated, I did an average for everybody, just an aggregate. It was about 5.5 years. If you stopped the TIF right now for everybody, you would have had your whole investment in 5.5 years. And that's after 15 years of paying in. And it'll only get better, my projections forward. And last year, we gained 5.25% growth last year, again in a down economy, and which I thought was just incredible how we've been continually growing. And for the TIF, for 15 straight years, and note that we were, Commissioner Brooks, you know this as well as anybody from, because we're inside your
I'm
area.
trying to create a record here.
Yes, sir. I appreciate it, and I'm bragging a little. But we have averaged 5% growth for 15 years, averaged. In the first 2 years, we had negative growth because we were so crime-ridden in a bad part of town. We had about 2.5% negative growth when everybody around us was growing positive by about 2.5% to 3%. We turned it around in the third year, and we've had positive growth since, and the average for 15 years is 5% growth every year for 15 years.
But you're saying that the overall value within the TIF has gone up 110%.
Yes, sir.
Since the TIF began.
That is correct, from $233 million to $486 million.
Okay. And it looks like with the numbers that we're talking about, we were in for about almost $8 million on a $45 million investment, and we're now going to be in for about 15 on a $90 million. So we're keeping the percentages, even though we're going to a lesser percentage deal.
And I do want to remind you, too, that recently the TIF is funding $2.5 million for the hospital district's project at the old St. Joseph's facility.
Correct.
That was not included in the project plan when it was originally set forth when the $45 million project plan. So that's one of the expanded projects that they were being funded for also.
Any other questions?
The city of Fort Worth and other entities, they still participate at 100%?
No.
Canton County College, Water Board?
No, the presentation as presented is the city went from 100% to 90. Water was 100, stayed at 100, and everybody else went to 50.
Okay.
Yes. And ISD was never addressed because of the state law change.
Right.
Did they use the $15 million to build a school?
They did not.
Okay.
For the $15 million that is to be used inside our area has been used for various projects with their schools. Predominantly, the most money spent on any one school was Trumbull Tech. but De Zavala was another project.
Okay.
I want to thank the court, in particular you, Judge Whitley, Commissioner Brooks. You've been very supportive of us, and I want to thank you very much. I wouldn't be here today with this proposal without your support. I want to thank you, and GK and Lisa, thank you so much.
I move approval.
Second. Any more discussion? Please vote. Motion passes unanimously.
Thank you.
Thank you. Ms. Tidwell? Or, nope. Good morning, sir.
Good morning, Judge, Commissioners.
Good morning.
You have before you today the financial statements for the month of April 2013 to be received and filed.
Move approval to receive and file.
Second. We have a motion and a second to receive and file April financial statements. Any discussion? Please vote. Motion passes unanimously.
Thank you.
Thank you, sir. Ms. Glenn?
Good morning.
Good morning.
We have 3 items for the court this morning. The first item, we're asking the court to receive and file the personnel agenda.
Move approval to receive and file.
Second.
We have a motion and a second to receive and file the personnel agenda. Any discussion? Please vote. Motion passes unanimously.
The second item, we're asking the court to approve the Job Evaluation Committee rules and guidelines. As is explained in your court communication, in part, these rules and guidelines evaluate the meeting process, outline that process, and also, we hope, provide a greater understanding of the job evaluation process. If approved, these rules and guidelines will be in effect for fiscal year 14 reclasses and new positions.
Move for approval.
Second. Any discussion?
Yeah,
Please.
I had a question.
Okay.
And, trying to pull this up. It had to do with the removal of members from the board. Tina, do you?
I think, Commissioner, you may be referring to, and I'm looking at the actual guidelines.
Number 4?
Number 2, item number 2. If you look in the middle of the paragraph near the end, and this may be what you're referring to, Commissioner, it reads, and again, these are the guidelines. You have 2 documents. You have, the first rules are rules and meeting guidelines, pardon me. The second document is entitled Guidelines for Job Evaluation Committee Presentations.
Yeah.
Item number 2, I believe it's the...
I brought this up to Ann.
Mm-hmm.
Is she here?
Yes, she is here.
And you left in what you had, Ange, from the meeting we had? You didn't make the change? Is that correct? Okay.
Yes, Commissioner, and
Is it the one that says presenters must leave the room?
No, it really had to do with the removal of a member of the board. And I think what my concern was, is this based, what would constitute that decision? Who would make that decision? Is it based on hearsay? Is it based on someone told somebody on the board that so-and-so was talking about it? How do you come to a conclusion that that actually happened, so that you then remove that person? That was my concern. How do you validate that the way this reads right now?
okay.
I think this leaves an awful lot to the...
I guess it would have, what they're saying there, I want to be sure I understand too, because it looks like what they're saying. It's in number 4. It says members that engage in inappropriate discussions will be recommended by HR for removal from the JEC. I'm assuming that recommendation would be made to us.
Correct. The
And
Commissioners...
that we would then weigh whatever discussions or anything that would come to us, and then we would make that decision.
Okay, I mean, does this require public hearing? Does this require bringing in the DA? There were a whole lot of questions that I had that I think this doesn't answer.
Well, I don't.
And I question why, I think you need to rethink that.
What item are you talking about, Commissioner?
Wouldn't it-
Item 4.
Item 4, on the first page?
It's the very first document,
Very
Commissioner
first
Wynn.
document.
It's in there twice.
Member rules and meeting guidelines. And if I can make just a couple of points, as the judge has mentioned, if there was a recommendation to be made for committee removal, of course, that recommendation would come to the Commissioner's Court. The Commissioner's Court has appointed the various departments that comprise this Job Evaluation Committee. So if any changes are to be made to the committee, that is the decision of the Commissioner's Court. So I don't know that I can provide a lot of details except to say, Commissioner Fickus, that these provisions are being proposed because in the past, we've received complaints from some appointing authorities, department heads, that they had concerns that there was inappropriate discussion occurring with regard to positions that were before the committee. And of course, committee members know that those discussions are not allowed. And so with input from the committee, these guidelines are being proposed. And clearly, if we had a complaint that rose to the level where we believed it was necessary to recommend removal of a committee member, we would come to you with all of the specific information that we gathered at the time and lay it out before the Commissioner's Court, and then, of course, ultimately, you all would make a decision about whether or not that member stayed on the committee or whether or not that member was removed from the committee.
I think that in actuality, paragraph number 4 was crafted to cure my objections to paragraph number 3, which distributes the material to be considered during the meeting at least 24 hours in advance. The practice, lo these many years, has been that you get the materials when you show up at the meeting.
Right.
And that in itself serves to keep down illegal discussions about the materials, because you never see them until you show up. If you get them 24 hours in advance, or if the meeting is lengthy, 48 hours in advance, then that leaves a whole lot of opportunity for both mal and misfeasance as relates to those materials. So my preference is that we stick to the process that exists now, that members of the committee are presented with the materials at the meeting, and if they need a little bit more time, they can come 30 minutes early and review the materials. But all of the discussion is within the meeting itself, and no opportunity to get on the phone or text or whatever about the materials.
I totally disagree with my commissioner to the right. I think it's appropriate to give that material, to give the members of the committee an opportunity to actually read it, okay? Versus walking into a meeting where you may have 3 or 4 agenda items and you don't, you as a member don't really have the opportunity to truly read it and understand it. What my concern again is you talk about a department head that comes to a committee member and says, I heard that this was going on, and then the committee is going to make the decision, did somebody talk inappropriately? And maybe that department head didn't hear that discussion. Somebody that works for them heard that discussion. Well, how do you know all of that actually took place? Do you bring in the attorneys? Do you interview people? Or do you take it to court and let us publicly remove somebody from the committee because they spoke out of turn? And maybe they really didn't.
Well, but I think a lot of it, though, Gary, is the fact that it is supposed to be confidential, and I do believe that if we pass it out 24 hours, and which I understand that there's enough of those going at times that need it. I think what the committee's trying to say is we take very seriously the responsibility of this committee, and that we really don't want people politicking or out there trying to persuade people one way or another to vote their position or not. And to some extent, I believe that happens even the way we've got it set up right now, because a department head or an elected official will know that they're going to be on that deal, and sometimes that occurs. But hopefully this would say to the, I would suspect that what somebody's going to say is, I got a call from, I continue every meeting to get a call from X person trying to influence me on these particular positions. And I just don't think it's not appropriate for the committee. Now, I hope that each one of the committee members takes it very seriously and that they get this information and they read over it, but they don't discuss it with anybody. And yes, it would be embarrassing for someone to be brought up to the court, and hopefully that'll be embarrassing enough that they won't do it.
On what could be hearsay.
Well, no, it won't be on hearsay, I doubt, because I would suspect that what HR will do is, if they have enough people on the committee coming to them and saying, this person is constantly calling me, asking or trying to influence my deal, and I'm on the committee, then that won't be hearsay.
Well, I assume we're appointing people to this committee who can read and understand in a reasonable period of time. 24 hours is not a reasonable period of time when you can't ask anybody any questions anyway.
Well, and Commissioner Fickus, if I could just make one additional comment. I would say, outside of the context of this discussion, the HR department is involved in investigations all the time, and we do, when necessary, bring in the district attorney's office. And clearly, we would not come forward with any case that we determined just to be hearsay and didn't have pretty solid evidence of what we would bring to the Commissioner's Court. We certainly understand the consequences of bringing an issue like this to you, and would only do so if, of course, we felt like we had grounds to do so.
I just think we're setting ourselves up for the biggest he said, she said issues.
And I think the way we avoid
for it. So
I think the way we avoid it is to just not pass out the information.
I think that has little to do with it. I think by not passing out the information, you're doing a disservice to your members of the board. You're asking them to come in and absorb all this information and immediately. It'd be like you going to a financial meeting at Whitley and Penn, and they hand you your financials that they want to approve in the next 15 minutes, and they expect you to understand it if you're maybe an outside person. So,
Well, I think if we are appointing members to serve on this committee, then we need to make it very clear to these individuals that this is a privilege, that we place a very strict confidence in their ability to do the job professionally.
What do we do?
Okay?
Copy of that.
And I don't know if we have some sort of an NDA agreement, a non-disclosure agreement that they need to sign and to understand that they will adhere to the strict confidential guideline. I mean, this is the same business practice that business corporations out there do all the time. When they sell and buy companies, they always sign NDA. There's always a chance that people will talk about it, but that is the best that we can do, and we're going to have to place the trust on the professionalism of the people that we place on this committee. Now, regarding item number 3, are you concerned about people reading it and then passing documents around? Or are you concerned about people who just kind of talk about it and lobby each other for it? I mean,
well, the reason for item 3, and this is something that the committee members, I'm told, felt very strongly about, and it goes to what Commissioner Fickus pointed out, and that is oftentimes if we have a fairly lengthy agenda, and we're getting to the point in the year where the meeting agendas can be fairly lengthy, and if there's quite a bit of material, committee members feel very strongly that they would like to have more time to actually review the documents as opposed to seeing the documents for the first time. Because what happens are a couple of things. The department, of course, is invited to come in. They make a presentation. The committee members, and I've sat through several meetings, are oftentimes trying to review the documents, understand, absorb what the department representatives are telling them, and then quickly move to the actual scoring phase. And so all of this is happening in a fairly short period of time. And so many of the committee members believe that it would be very helpful if they could have the documentation at least a day ahead of time so that they could review the information, perhaps have questions already in place for the representative who's going to be making the presentation.
Perhaps a happy medium, and let me make a recommendation. Maybe we can come to the middle of the road here. Instead of sending out documents, we have the technology to create a portal that is confidential and private only to the members of the committee. They will be given password, and every time before they log in and being able to view that document, there will be a strict warning that reminding them that they need to be confidential about this stuff. And once they click, yes, I agree, then they will be given access to those documents. And they cannot download those documents. They can only view them. Okay, that's perhaps is a happy medium that will rectify some of the concerns that Commissioner Brooks have and some of the concerns Commissioner Fickus have. And we have the technology to do that.
Are we I mean, I guess one of the questions were we planning on printing it out and sending them the printed documents?
I'm not really sure what process. Email? Email.
They said email.
And so I assume that what we're trying to also do here is, as you kind of described that, I think I understood it a little bit better. Basically, what everybody will have is they'll have the opportunity to look over the documents and at that point in time formulate any questions that they have. The assumption is at that point that we really don't want them calling Ange or anybody else and asking any of those questions, because then the entire committee did not have the opportunity to hear the dialogue back and forth. And that's one of the things that the committee is trying to protect against, is there being individual conversations that the committee as a whole does not have an opportunity to hear and be a part of. So whether it's, I mean, basically there should be no questions or no dialogue. It should simply be, I'm going to review this so that I've got my questions ready and available going in, and I can spend more time listening to the presentations by the various departments and other dialogue and questions are going back and forth during that time instead of trying to read and hear at the same time.
It's a challenge. I mean, it's a challenge and anybody who sits on the committee, I'm sure, wouldn't hesitate to tell you that. And Commissioner Brooks has sat on the committee as well.
For 14 years.
For long 14
tried
years.
27 years, and as far as I'm concerned, you've heard my suggestion on this committee, and that is to abolish it. I never have liked it. I still think it's political, and you're not going to take politics out of it with these rules that you have written. I just, there's got to be a better way of doing that. Either this court needs to go through that process, or we need to hire a firm outside of the county. We've got 16 people tied up every time that we have one of these meetings. That's expensive. And those 16 people, God bless them, I love them all, but politics are going to play a role in this. It depends on whether it's Roy, who everybody loves, or Gary Fickus, who everybody hates. Who's going to get the but who's going to get the vote on this thing?
Let me crawl out from under that bus.
I don't hate you, Commissioner Fickus.
Well, but I believe very strongly, I mean, I disagree with you on the committee. I think that the caliber of the individuals that we have on that committee are the folks who understand the best of of how comparisons are made between various departments. And, it may be political among 16. I can absolutely guarantee you it'll be political among 5. A whole lot more political. And so my preference is to allow what in effect are the chief individuals from each one of the bigger departments to come together, and they know their people and they trust in the people that are in those positions in the other place. And I don't think bringing Hay or anybody else in for that, and Hay was the one that developed this system.
Right.
So I don't think bringing someone else in who is not familiar with what is actually going on in the individual departments and paying them what will be a very expensive ticket too.
Extremely. I agree with what the judge has said. Those persons who sit as the committee are the ones best situated to make these judgments. I suppose I could accept the happy medium as a solution. However, I think a better solution would be to convene the committee an hour in advance, pass out the materials, and allow during that hour everybody to read the materials, take their notes, and then call the first case.
Well, Commissioner, I heard a lot of sighing to my left. I'm assuming that came from
They don't have a
Ange.
vote.
I understand. Maybe it wasn't Ange. Maybe I'm blaming Ange and it wasn't her. What I will say, and certainly Ange can come up and correct me if I'm mistaken, I know one of the challenges that Ange has and that we've had in the past, of course, is making sure that we have a quorum when we need a quorum. Obviously, as has been pointed out, the individuals that serve on this committee are at very high levels in the organizations, and oftentimes we have issues with, their calendars and whether they can make a meeting or not. So it's a challenge currently. I'm only pointing out that we may have a larger challenge if we expect an additional hour.
If
yes,
they
sir.
can make the meeting, they can make the meeting an hour earlier. This is a priority. And department heads need to
I concur.
Need to enforce upon their representatives that this is a priority to be taken seriously, and that when a meeting is called, they're supposed to show up.
I concur 100%.
Commissioner Fickens.
Pete, I hope you understand that my reason on item 4 is to protect the 16 members of the board from somebody who didn't get what they wanted saying something that may or may not be true, or somebody else saying something. It's to protect the integrity of those 16 people on this board. Back to Commissioner Johnson's comment on how much money we're spending. We meet an hour earlier, and we're saying that is more cost efficient than hiring Hay? You got to be kidding me.
I still don't believe
3 or 4 hours?
I still don't believe Hay is going to be capable of making the evaluations across the various departments.
Hay may not be the company.
Well, I'll just say this, I'll just make this comment. We're not going to find a perfect solution, and I think I've shared with some of you, the organization that I came from prior to working here at the county was a much smaller organization. We had about 1,000 employees at the time, city government, and the HR department simply conducted all of the evaluations. And we got pushed back in that instance. And so I just don't, there's not a process that we're going to have in place that's going to be seen or viewed as a perfect process, not political, not influenced. That's just the nature of the beast when you look at processes like this. Our attempt is to outline the process, make it as transparent as possible, communicate to departments and committee members that this is an important task that we've asked these individuals to do, and to make sure that they understand that they should take this matter very seriously and should not be discussing the inner workings of the committee. And we've not had a lot of that. We've not. I don't want to paint a picture that this has been just a out of control committee. I think for the most part, It's been a very good committee. I think they provide a valuable service to the county, and we're just trying to tweak it to make it as good a process as we can make it. Is it going to be perfect? No.
I would suggest that, you know, if your concern materializes, we can make changes to, but I think we're in a process of trying to allow, I think this recommendation is in a process of trying to allow the information to go out early, but at least hopefully expressing the importance. If it ends up being something that we feel like is being abused, I think we can make changes to it. But for this not to pass at this point in time will simply mean that we'll stay as we are, and no information will be able to be distributed on an earlier basis.
I would like to hopefully maybe have the motion withdrawn and let's table this to work these problems out. I'm not happy at all with where we're headed, at all. I mean, I'm not going to vote for it. Okay, but and I may be the only one that feels that way, but I would certainly like to see us work this out a little better on those two issues that I brought up, and the timing of when you get your documents. And if we're looking at bringing people an hour earlier, for what is typically, I'm guessing, an hour to a 2-hour meeting.
Sometimes longer.
Or longer. And if you're coming from anywhere other than downtown, then you've got travel time. So we're tying people up, you know, basically a half a day.
How many meetings a month do we have?
As you get nearer the budget,
Just depends on.
it could be once a week. Once you get outside of the budget, then it's less frequent. But again, this is something that's very important, and I'm not discounting anybody's time and the value of that time. But the people that we're talking about are here on a salary type basis, and they're not getting paid overtime. And quite honestly, I don't think many of them are expecting to be working 40-hour weeks. And so if they end up having to spend a little bit more time, it is an important deal, and they're just going to have to spend it.
Well, we have several safeguards already. First, members of the committee will have to sign a document saying that they understand the new rule and they agree to comply to it, right? And included it some sort of an NDA clause in there. That's the first safeguard. The second safeguard is these documentation will be posted on a portal. They will enter their password. Before they have access to these documents, they will have another statement saying, hey, you got to be very professional about this, keeping things confidential. If you agree, click yes. That's the second safeguard. The third safeguard is I cannot speak for other departments, but for my office, I appointed Jenny McGarry, and I will hold her accountable. Okay, I will not wait for the court to parade her in public. I will basically handle the discipline myself. Okay, so I think the third safeguard is the department heads keeping its appointments accountable to the professionalism expected of these court members. With those three safeguards, I think we can eliminate 99% of the concerns. The other 1% will always be in existence, because it's the nature of the job. I don't think we will ever be able to eliminate 100%.
It's the nature of human beings.
That's true as well.
Again, I would ask that we've got some really good ideas, that we take this, not act on this, and bring it back in a form that might work a little better.
If you incorporated Commissioner Wynn's suggestion, I would be more inclined to support it.
The one thing I don't have a problem with them signing. I think, signing a document would be fine. Quite honestly, they're already password protected in that they have to have their password in order to get into the emails. Now, granted, we probably all leave our emails open from time to time, but that doesn't prevent from getting into the portal and leaving the emails open. I have no...
You can't print from the portal. You can print from an email.
You can't print.
And I guess the question that I would ask of the members of the committee is how critical is it, and maybe you can just ask your questions by reading through the electronic version. I don't know how big of an issue that is. And Commissioner Fickus, I don't have a problem if we want to, if the committee wants to go back, having many of you are here in the room, so you can certainly go back and figure out and try to address some of the concerns that we put up here. But I think it needs to be something that's brought back in a week or at most two for us to move forward, because the very thing that you're asking, I would assume you're getting into the busy season of job evaluations.
We are.
And and these are when the biggest loads are going to occur.
Don't we have rules and regulations in place already?
We
don't.
do, but you're not going to get a copy. If
I understand.
that's going to be the one. If we don't approve it today or we don't move forward with it today, then basically you're going to come to a meeting.
Is it specifically say
Currently,
that you get your information the moment when you walk in the room?
we do not have any, we don't currently have any written guidelines or rules,
I didn't
which
think
is why we're presenting what we're presenting today. Now, the practice has been that HR brings the materials that departments have provided us with to the committee meetings, distributes the materials, and then again, committee members oftentimes as the department representative is making their presentation, are actually going through the documents at that point in time. At least that was my experience. Is it any different? Oh.
Tina,
Yes.
my point I brought up on how do you evaluate whether somebody was brought up at my meeting, okay, when I met with Ann.
Yes, it was. She relayed that to me.
And I was very specific about my concerns with it, and obviously, and I was told that y'all are going to ignore it, that it would come back just as it was, no changes. So, you didn't obviously pay any attention to what I said, so.
Well, I certainly hope that.
What everybody else said.
Well, and they may have.
Right, Commissioner.
Or maybe nobody else thought it was
No,
an issue.
I mentioned it, but again, one of the things that I had thought through that process was, yes, it's very difficult, and I had exactly the same concerns you did, but I guess where I left it was that I had trust, and until I saw that it was being abused or that I didn't feel like it was going to work, then I was willing to go forward with the way it was worded. But I'm not looking for, I'm not looking for us to spend money on big investigations or anything like that, and I would hope that we'll never have to address the issue, and if we do, then at that point in time, we may decide that this ain't working, we've got to come up with a different idea.
So I think the only way that we can handle and address the concern that Commissioner Fickus have is to essentially have HR go through the investigation process. You would have to collect evidence and witness statements, okay? And then you would have to address it to the department head, whoever is the head of the appointee, right? Okay. And so the first step is we would handle that situation internally within that department. Let's say my appointment made an error in her confidence. I would have to counsel her separately to make sure that she won't do that again. But if the second and third violation, and if the department doesn't act, if the department head doesn't act on that violation, then maybe the court is going to have to. I don't see any other way around that approach, because in an investigative process, the only things that you can do is collect evidence and take statements from witnesses. That's all you can do. How else can you collect information to make a decision on whether to remove this person or not?
That's correct.
I think my point all along is what you're going to have, what you're setting yourself up for. If it was one of my key people that's on that committee, and that person says, hey, Commissioner, I can talk to anybody. But somebody says, well, I know she did, or he did.
Mhm.
I don't have any he's, but.
If you did have a he.
I know she did.
Mhm.
So I'm going to do what it could be, but I'm going to try to protect her innocence. I'm going to ask those questions. Did you know, who interviewed who? Was it somebody that's capable of interviewing? Is it somebody that knows how to do that? Was it somebody with the DA's? I mean, I'm going to ask all those questions, and you've left that totally open. And yeah, I'd rather not even have that paragraph in this, okay, than have it in it. I
Right.
prefer it not even be there.
I understand you feel very strongly about the language, and I don't want you to believe that I didn't hear from Ange that you had objections to this language. I did hear from Ange that you had strong objections to this language. When Ange visited with the other commissioners, they had concerns about this issue and other issues as well. And so I certainly didn't feel like it was my role to change any of the language. I felt like that's what this presentation was about today, to just discuss this, as you all are doing currently, and then send us back to make changes or not as you see fit. So please don't believe, Commissioner, that we've ignored you. We've
Let me
not.
ask you this.
I'm just asking to table.
Will
I
it cause a
understand.
major problem if we table this matter for 2 weeks?
No, I don't believe that it will. We would like to bring this issue back, as the judges has made mention of, as quickly as possible, because we are getting ready to get, up to our eyeballs and alligators with reclass requests and job evaluation appraisal, so or evaluation and grading. So we need to get this done sooner rather than later.
Would tabling this today cause you not to have a meeting?
No.
No, it'll
No,
simply say that you
we
won't
would
get the
say-
information ahead of time.
We
No,
would-
no.
No, it would not.
Against that.
Yes, there is a guidance and a practice that is, at least as far as I'm concerned, I would like to
We
see
would-
continued.
We would just revert back to the process that we have in place. But again, if there's interest in implementing these new rules and procedures, we'd want to do that as quickly as possible.
Do we have a motion on the floor?
No, we do not.
I move
Have a
that we-
motion?
I did.
Okay, so we have a motion and a second.
But it's not to
We
table
do?
it.
No, it's to move forward.
We don't have a vote. We have a motion and a second. Commissioner Wynn, motion. Judge, you second.
To approve it.
Judge, do you have a problem withdrawing?
I do not have a problem at all with us delaying this for
I
a
table my
week or
motion
2
for
weeks,
4
depending upon when.
Next week I won't be here, Judge,
Okay, then 2 weeks.
if that's okay.
Okay, we'll be back in 2 weeks.
All right, thank you.
I have one more item.
You bet.
Our third item we're
I hope
asking.
it goes better than this last
I
one.
hope so too. I hope so too. I think I've been here 20 minutes. The third item, we're asking the court to approve changes to the table of organization to add an enterprise architect position in IT. This position was approved by the court back on April 30th as
Move
part
approval.
of the web portal and social media
A motion and a
strategic
second.
roadmap.
Is there any discussion? I think the motion's going to pass unanimously.
Yeah, it will.
It will pass unanimously.
Thank you.
That was for the last.
I knew that. I thought that might be the case. Did Mr. Wetzel just leave? No. Okay. I thought he might have decided he didn't want to come forward for that item. Good morning.
Good morning, Chris.
Good morning, Judge. Good morning, Commissioners. I'm Chris Airfor, sitting in for Mr. Wetzel today. I'm his deputy. It is requested that the Commissioners Court approve information technology staffing services, project management utilizing the State of Texas Department of Information Resources, the DIR contract, number DIR-SDD 1117 for the Information Technology Department with Tech Systems Incorporated. The amount is $77,768 and 78 cents, which will include $11,992.38 of outstanding invoices for work that's already been performed.
Move approval.
Second.
We have a motion and a second. Any discussion? Please vote. Motion passes unanimously. Thank you, sir. Mr. Beecham.
Your Honor, the members of the court, we have one item for your consideration this morning. It is a bid award recommendation for bid 2013-059, saying a contract for the purchase of skid steer loaders and compact rubber track loaders. Recommendation would be to award on a per unit price basis, awarding certain items to the 5 vendors as shown in the court communique. We did receive 2 bids, one from Austin Turf and Equipment and Highway Equipment, which were deemed non-responsive for not including addendum number 2, which added a dirt bucket, which would theoretically increase their cost. Both vendors were contacted, and they indicated they simply forgot to include the addendums.
Move.
I thought you called one of us a dirt bucket.
I move approval.
Not this morning.
We have a motion and a second. Any further discussion? Please vote. Motion passes unanimously.
Thank you.
Did you notice who the SEC baseball champions were this year? It is not Arkansas, and it isn't Kentucky.
It's in Kentucky.
Go Tigers.
Yes, sir.
Court members, are there any appointments today? There being none, then you have before you the claims, including the addendum.
Move approval of the claims, including the addendum.
Second.
We have a motion and a second to approve the claims, including the addendum. Please vote. Motion passes unanimously. Briefing items, Mr. Manius.
Thank you, Your Honor. Members of the court, we have 4 items to bring to you today. The first one concerns an overview of the county's 1115 waiver delivery system reform incentive package. Ms. Brewer is here to address the court at this time.
Good morning.
Good morning.
Good morning.
I have 2 of our key members of our team that have been working on our DISRIP projects this morning. I'll be introducing them in just a minute. I wanted to just give you several overarching comments about the waiver 1115. This waiver, Texas is one of only a few states that's working on this waiver. It is more comprehensive than the part that we're involved in, which is the DISRIP part. It involves hospitals and their reimbursement from other reimbursement streams that we're not involved in. But the part we're involved in is the Delivery System Reform Incentive Program, which is the DISRIP projects. And so that's what you'll be hearing about this morning. We're a member of the Regional Health Partnership 10. These were new regions that were created by the State Department of Health and Human Services for this waiver 1115 effort. As we've been involved in this for over a year now. When we first started, we were able to scrape together just a little bit of money, about $376,000. You had to be able to put money on the table up front to be able to leverage projects, and that leveraged us about 2 projects. This was about this time last year. It was determined during the course of events that there weren't any other local public health departments in Region 10 that were going to participate. There was actually only one other local health department, very small one, and they decided not to participate. So it was then that we learned that there was a 5% allocation of the funds coming to Region 10 for public health, and we were then encouraged to come up with a lot more projects. So then we also had to have a discussion about finding the upfront money to put on the table. We had those conversations. Much has changed, both with the process and with our capabilities during the past 15 or 18 months that we've been involved in this. We really appreciate the support of Judge Whitley on the elected official steering committee and G.K. Manius in helping us, and Debbie Schneider from the budget office in helping us with all of these different gyrations, if you will, in terms of what the expectations have been. If you run into any of the other hospitals or MHMR out in the community, we kind of greet each other with this DISRIP glaze in our eyes and just kind of take a deep breath, because we've been asked to go through many different iterations. We have developed 10 projects to date.
One was rejected early on by Health and Human Services before it even went to Medicaid, the Medicaid office. We totally redid one of our projects at their request, and the challenge has been that while this is supposed to be a system recreation, if you will, with greater emphasis on preventing rehospitalizations, and we see a great role for public health in that, the understanding and the language in the actual waiver itself hasn't quite caught up with that yet. So what we found was that it was very hospital-specific in terms of the measurements, in terms of the focus areas, in terms of the expectations. And what we've heard recently back from Health and Human Services and even through them from the Medicaid offices, they realize that and that they want to work with us on trying to get some of our off-menu projects, and you'll hear about that again in a minute, on the menu. We've checked with our other large health departments in the state, and you'll be hearing about our 4 off-menu projects this morning. Houston had 5 off-menu projects. Bexar County, San Antonio had 3 off-menu projects, and others did as well. So we're all working through the Texas Association of Local Health Officials to see if there's some common themes and threads there that we can all learn from. In addition, you approved a contract a while back with one of the consultant groups that's been working through Region 10, and we now have them on board to work with us to hopefully get some of these other projects on menu, and they've been very, very encouraging and supportive in this process. And so with that, I'm going to turn it over to Doug Fabio, and I just want to say Doug is our Associate Director for Planning and Policy, and Marcia, as our Business Office Manager, have just worked hours and hours and hours on this, and I really appreciate all their work. Thank you.
Thank you, Lou.
Thank you.
Doug?
Good morning, Your Honor and Commissioners.
Good morning, Doug.
I'm going to see if I can advance this. Arrow down. Thanks, J.K. Okay, what I wanted to bring to your attention for just a moment, I'm just going to give you all a real basic brief overview. Waiver funds cannot be used for new construction or to continue operations with existing program services. What you can do, and this is what helped frame our, as Lou was saying a moment ago, our projects. Now we have 8, and we've got one that we're going to be sending a matter of balance probably in October, just because of the fact that we don't want that to affect the valuation right now. But if you have an existing program service and you're looking to expand it, and you've got a target population that you have not served before, that is fine to do. And if you have a new program service that you have thought of and you want to reach out to a target population in the county, any of the 4 precincts, then you can begin framing and forming that idea and putting it onto the project templates.
Yeah, can I ask?
Yes, sir.
But it says here the waiver funds can't be used for new construction. Can the disrupt funds
No,
be
sir.
used?
No. And when we say
only program expansion.
Right.
Okay.
Yeah.
When you say waiver funds, you're talking about disrep. The waiver 1115 is divided into 2 categories: disrep and uncompensated care.
Yes, sir. That's right. And we did not enter into uncompensated care. That is something that is a hospital performing provider. Non-hospital performing providers, mental health and public health, cannot get in that arena.
Okay.
Okay. So what we want to do real quickly is just go over those 8 projects that we had submitted, and when we got that letter of initial approval, I'm going to go over in a minute with you some of their comments. The first one here is that health information exchange. That will have a regional impact, the county and other counties around us. And essentially what we're trying to do is to get those other performing providers to use and analyze data that's going to be housed in this cloud, if you will, in a regional network, so that they can identify more early health conditions and what we would call disease state hotspots to these disproportionately affected groups. And then we would more appropriately send our resources out to try to mitigate things and bring a better quality of care. The other one is that we did an implementation of antenatal steroids, and that is just so that when women who have preterm birth, and they have maybe a history of this, that then they won't go into spontaneous preterm birth or have a low birth weight baby, but with this steroid, it would allow that not to occur. We get into the PRIDE initiative. This is preventive health promotion. It is to reach out to the young adolescents. It would be in an area of Arlington. And what it is to try to educate them about sexually transmitted diseases and how to make more appropriate choices. We get into the Arlington STD clinic expansion. That would be in an area of Arlington. We have this at our flagship agency, and we wanted to increase the hours and increase this in Arlington because of the fact, as you've probably heard before, the STD rates there have only gone up and up. Then we have chronic disease self-management program. This is based on a Stanford model. It's not just an emerging best practice. It is an evidence-based practice. And one of the areas that we thought we would look at is hypertension, so that we're trying to get patients to not keep going through the emergency department of our many hospitals here, but to let them be able to more chronically manage their disease. Yes, sir?
Go back to the PRIDE initiative.
Sure.
That's a program that was designed based upon my suggestion. How did it get to be an Arlington-only program?
It's not Arlington only. It's actually
That's what he said.
It's actually to expand the program into Arlington.
In an area of Arlington, excuse me, yeah, which it's not there now.
Okay.
Okay, then we have a TB medication management. This is to use a drug rifampicin so that instead of taking 6 months, if we have these clients coming in on a daily basis, we can have that so that they're only having to take it for 3 months, and then they will not be in an active state. They're able to manage this, so they won't be in the community with an active state. And then there was the TB clinic expansion, and that was to increase the hours that we had already in an area of Arlington and in Tarrant County. So we're just trying to increase the hours there. We have a clinic here at our flagship facility. And then we have the tobacco intervention, and the idea there was to reach out to the residents of our county that are using tobacco and to use face-to-face counseling or to use telephone intervention, and to get these people to, if they are tobacco users, to lessen that and eventually learn to get through cessation and quit. So that was the tobacco intervention.
Do we have any documentation, any way of knowing what percentage of our population uses tobacco?
Yes, sir. I don't have that with me today. I'm not a subject matter expert on that, but I could go to Glenda Redeemer. She was the one that was the project lead for that project, and I could get that information for you.
Thank you.
All right. Project off menu. This is something that we had, you'll see in another slide or two, we had on 4 of our projects. And I think the important thing here is that in California and Massachusetts heretofore, when they did the waiver project, they were exclusively with hospitals. So their outcome improvement measures clinically are very prescribed, and it's a list of 23 or more, and it's all in a hospital setting. So what they told us is that if you didn't modify your project outcome option measures so that they align more with a hospital, then you really had to have that word compelling justification for why you were choosing a quote-unquote other project option. Well, certainly mental health, and since I'm with public health, I'll go on with public health. We had 4 projects that were cited as off-menu, and yet they were evidence-based or emerging best practice, and so we were giving them what we thought was compelling justification. We're getting a chance to rework that and send that back in. We found that the people in Austin at HHSC or CMS just were not accustomed to seeing public health outcome measures. I and Marcia and Lou have participated over the last maybe 4 to 6 weeks on a couple calls where we're trying to talk with HHSC and get them more amenable to dialoguing with us. And of course, we are making those adjustments, as I said, and we're going to send them back in. They've given us now till June 3rd for those projects. So that's what we're working on now, to get them back in and see if now when they review them, they will actually be, again, a little more amenable, a little more open to those public health outcome measures where they weren't before. All right. Then the other thing is that then I thought there was a series of questions I just wanted to bring to your attention, that if you're going to actually take and use compelling justification, what you had to do. They want things to be project evidence-based. And if not, they want you to go back into that literature and find out that it's an emerging best practice, and it has to be within the last 10 years. So they're really making you do your due diligence, if you will, that compelling story. Another thing another question was that pertained to us was, does the project plan include a compelling rationale that describes, well, why is that project off menu, and will it still be successful? So that's what we have been, for months and months and months, every time we would send it in, we thought HHSC was beginning to understand that, and now I think we've made even more inroads with them, and we're going to be turning that around and sending it back in on those 4. And then another one is they want us to be really clear. It's just a very basic question. What's the doggone rationale? You've got to be really upfront with them on that. So those were questions that I thought were paramount to us and related to what we were doing. I just wanted you to know that. All right. Then, as I said, a couple weeks back, we got this initial approval letter. And the first one that doesn't have to have any adjustments made to that, where it's technical things with objectives and measures, or whether it's project valuation or whether it's off menu, was our chronic disease self-management program, which, remember, is targeting the hypertension. Then we got into another category, which they had, which was technical review, and we didn't have any that qualified for that. So we got into the next category, which was project value. Project value is based on an logarithm formula where they look at the individual benefit your project's going to have, and they look at the community benefit. And it has a 1 to 5 scale. So with that, we had 3 projects that they wanted us to rework. TB clinic expansion, those are to increase the hours and some staff. The other one was those antenatal steroids, and the other one was the tobacco intervention, to be dealing with people that are tobacco users and getting them to get successfully into a cessation program. Then we have 4 projects that we feel are still very important, which they use that term off menu. And that was the HIE, the Health Information Exchange, the PRIDE, the Arlington STD clinic expansion, and the TB medication management. And again, the TB medication management is going to be saving a lot of time in time, money, and the fact that you've got a greater likelihood if someone has to remember daily to come in for 3 months than if it has to stretch out to 6 months for their medication. It's very regimented. And at this point, what you have here, Marcia's put together, it's a snapshot. I'm going to defer now to Marcia, but if you're looking at it, if you read left to right like we all do, you see the project name, those are the 8. You see a 5-year estimated revenue payments, and I'm going to defer now and let Marcia walk you through that.
I'm not going to go line by line. The basic gist is we have 4 of these projects approved now. We have the other 4 that are off menu, but we're working to get them approved. At the bottom, you'll see it's almost, the value right now is about $64 million. This is probably going to change because as we change the projects, the values change. So this is not a number that I can say that's an absolute. Also over there where it says estimated cost of the projects, that may also change some because like Friday, I was talking to the CPA firm that's working with us on this. There's some of it that in order as they rework it, it may change some of the cost of it. It may change some of the value. So these are our estimates as of right now.
And this is the DISREP programs.
Right.
This is the estimate. I think under the 1115 waiver, it's replacing the old DISPRO,
Yes.
which was a non-accountability type of a system. It was just dollars come, you don't have to hit any targets or anything along that lines. And that system had been in place for many, many years. The proposal, as it currently exists, is this 1115 waiver, I think, is supposed to be in existence for 5 years, hence the 5-year estimated revenue payments. And over that 5-year period, while DISREP is ramping up and uncompensated care is ramping up, the old DISPRO system is ramping down to where they have said that at the end of that 5 years, DISPRO will no longer be there. So the anticipation is what happens at the end of 5 years. If you go historically, DISPRO has historically had been continued to be continued. So if DISPRO goes down, then the assumption would be that DISREP or uncompensated care or some new system is going to carry forward. And really, basically, what we've got is to look at the DISREP program now as is where we get the best leverage. And if I'm looking at this, and Commissioner Fickus commented on this, it appears as though we're getting about a 7-to-1 return. So for every, I guess, 12 cents we put up, we get 88 cents back, or somewhere around that time frame. Maybe a little bit, yeah, probably around that, somewhere in that vicinity.
If you're looking
so
at,
it's a greater return than what we would get if we were putting up. I think the DISPRO now is up around. We have to put up 80-something cents in order to get back.
except that public health wasn't able
Was
to
not
participate.
eligible for DISPRO.
Yeah, we couldn't
And
participate.
they're not eligible for the
Or the
uncompensated care.
Right, correct.
So this whole DISREP has allowed MHMR, public health,
To
and other
participate.
entities to participate, but you got to have the IGT money or the money that you're
Correct.
putting up in order to draw the money down.
Right.
So hopefully, given that if you hit your requirements, then this $9 million that we're putting up will yield us $64 million extra dollars.
Actually, the $9 million that's at the bottom, that's not our IGT.
Okay.
That's what we're estimating it will cost us to do the projects. So actually, for the IGT, the difference is, like, I think it's for every 42 cents we put in, we get the 58 cents back.
Okay. Okay.
If that kind of answers
Good
what you're
return.
asking, yeah.
And at some point, if it goes away, or if the federal government ever decides to get fiscally responsible, then, that's right, then we will not be getting this money probably, but until such time, if they're doling it out, then based upon the amount of tax we're sending up there, we ought to get a little bit of the extra back.
They've also told us, the state, that now that they've looked at everybody's valuations, because we had to base that on evidence-based practices, we had to find it in the literature that if you implement these evidence-based practices, this is what the cost savings will be. That I think everybody just kind of blew them out of the water, I mean, with evidence-based practices and backing it up with the literature. So they've also cautioned us that they're going to be looking at the year 4 and 5 valuations, and they may lower that a little bit too. So.
And I would say that California started the 1115 waiver, and their measures were extreme, their goals were extremely low. And that they've come back in and raised those goals based upon how low the folks in the programs out there were set. So I think that follows along the lines of what you're saying. But I think we're already experiencing a little bit of that. And so our goals are probably a little bit more, there'll be a little bit more of a challenge to reach than what maybe the earlier ones were in California.
I have a question here. Help me understand the $8.9 million,
Yes, sir.
approximately $9 million.
Yes, sir.
That would be the cost that the county will incur to carry out these programs. If
Yes,
they are-
it would be a county cost.
It would be a
We
county
are
cost.
anticipating using the district money for those expenses.
Okay. So we will have to incur these costs whether
Correct.
we get the district back or not, whether we get the money back or not from the federal government.
I'm not sure I would state it that way, but
Because-
if we aren't paying for ourselves, I don't see it continuing, if that is what you're
If
asking.
the federal government doesn't send us the money back, what you're saying is the federal government doesn't send us the money, then we're not going to do the program.
Not doing the program.
I don't see, I mean, we would as long as we had a district balance, but at that point, I mean, I don't know that,
Right, because, for example, under the town county tobacco intervention, which is approved, we would have to front $829,409. We have to hire 4 FTEs, right?
Right.
We have to hire 4 FTEs.
Right.
For whatever reason.
Right.
The federal government decides they're not going to fund us that
Right.
money, then we will basically have to.
decide, do we want to continue the program?
Then
Yes.
we're going to have to decide.
Yes.
And that's the risk.
And
Yes.
is that, but in using that, and that's a great example, but that 829,000, that's not an annual expense, that is a 4.5-year expense.
It is.
That's a 4.5-year expense.
Yes.
So
So
we
at
will
any
have to incur,
Yeah,
right?
So,
Right.
well, but at any time during that 4.5 years, if the federal government says, we're not sending you any money anymore, then we have the ability to literally eliminate that program. We will have been reimbursed for up to that point.
Okay. So those 4 employees, are they grant employees? Are they FTE?
They're
Can we just dismiss
FTEs.
them, or?
No. We did do some research on whether or not these would be classified as a grant, and that was difficult in itself. And I say we, with the grant people in the auditor's office, that was difficult in itself coming up with that answer. In the end, the answer is no. We will treat this as a special purpose budget. We're going to segregate the program costs from the operation of the public health department and from everything else within the county.
Within the county, okay.
So it will be a special purpose budget, just as public health operates today.
Would these employees be subject to civil service rules?
By treating, yes, but by keeping them together in a separate special purpose fund, though they won't be commingled with other public health departments, so as funding might be eliminated for whatever reason, then we look within that structure only, instead of going
to continue.
over into other public health positions
I see,
of
okay.
like nature.
I'm
Like
with
nature, I mean job description,
Okay.
not function.
Which
So
is
it
a good
would-
way to contain that risk.
Absolutely.
Okay.
Very safe.
So it means like if, again, going back, they're in civil service, but if that particular program was terminated, then it would simply just be, we're eliminating these positions, and therefore they don't become subject to seniority or anything else from all the other.
You treat them almost as if it's a grant program, but you put it in a special budget fund.
Because
And
you've
you,
got to make the definition.
right, and you're simply emulating that.
Okay.
And of the 42 cents, basically, you were talking about we are sending in 42% of the $64 million,
Yes, sir.
right? And we'll get back the other 58%.
Yes, sir.
Right, okay. And now help me understand, how does, for example, the value of the tobacco project is $22.4 million.
Yes. It's,
How is
it's,
that amount broken down? Into benchmarks, and then we
yes,
have to
into
have
benchmarks.
specific deliverables, right?
Yes, each year and actually in every 6 months, there's certain benchmarks. They call them milestones, and then when you move into years 4 and 5, they're called objectives.
Objectives, okay.
So each one of those 6 months time period, it's all set out as to what are your benchmarks that you have to meet, and for that benchmark, there's a value that's established for it.
There's a value in dollars.
In dollars.
Okay.
And you
And if we don't meet those benchmarks, what happens?
if you get 0 of the benchmark, you get $0. If you get, say, 25% of whatever the benchmark is, you get 25% of that. And you have, it's not a everything or not. Say you got 25% of the original benchmark, then you still have a year's time after that to meet that original benchmark to get 100%. So you still can recoup your money and get your money. It's not like it's just off the table. So, and since this whole thing is way behind schedule, like we're in DY2, that's what this year's called, and we just now are getting the approval, so we're way behind. So this first payment probably, I foresee we'll probably get 25% of things that we could do without the staff on board. So the first payment probably will be 25%, but we'll catch up as we get into this next year.
Have we gotten the $2.4 million?
Yes, we
back
actually
yet?
did
Or
on
May 20th?
Friday.
We did.
Friday afternoon, we got it. So it's
Did
here.
the check clear?
It wasn't a check.
I don't know. No, just for point of information.
Yes.
I'm just trying to understand this, okay? So please don't misunderstand my
No,
question.
no, these are good questions.
How are we planning to measure the success of the tobacco program, for example? How are we planning to quantify and make these things measurable? Let's say we have 1.8 million people in Tarrant County, okay? 20% are smokers. Do we have that stat? Like
Yes, as Doug said, Glenda Redeemer is the point person on this, and she has all the statistics and has what we're going to target, the amount that we think we will serve. And if I remember correctly, is this one through THR? Is this the one? Yes. Yeah, the referrals will be through THR, so that's one point of contact where we will have doctors referring to this program. So we'll have at least hopefully a pool that she has the numbers. I don't actually know the numbers.
So we won't be dealing with the entire smoking population in Tarrant County. We probably will take a small
Yes,
sample.
just a small
pool of it,
yeah.
like 1,000 people.
But within each one of these projects, within each one of these things, we have already, when we submitted the project, we also submitted the goal and the mileposts.
Exactly, yes.
So that means that on any one of these projects, I mean, this goes right in line with what you were suggesting as far as results-based. Each one of these projects will have your milestones that we're going to be evaluated on. So if you want one or all of those projects to see those things, you could send the applications for one or all of those to Commissioner Wynn or any of us.
Yes, we can, but I want to caution that it's still in some tweaking mode, so.
You're still dealing with several moving targets.
Exactly.
Well, I think this is very, very good information. It gives us a snapshot of a very small piece of an overall system. What I'd like for us to work towards is how this fits into the entire 1115 waiver system. This is not even all of the DISRIP piece. It's the public health piece of the DISRIP. I'd like to know what it all looks like and how it fits together.
There's
And
111.
as we go along,
There's 111 different DISREP programs that have been approved within our Region 10, many by the private hospitals or the nonprofit hospitals, many by MHMR. You see here what is public health, but again, that's probably less than 10% of the total programs, and we may still get more because of the fact that the other regions did not apply.
Right.
For.
But the purpose of all of this 1115 waiver process is to create a system for the delivery of health care within a region that is measurable and integrated. And I just want to know what the system looks like as a system and not just various pieces of it.
Who is directly responsible for the success of these programs that you put up here?
Well, I am ultimately, but
not JPS, right?
No.
This is public health programs.
Yes.
Okay.
And we've had the program people, the subject matter experts working on this from the very beginning. So they are the ones that have been telling us what are the best practices, what is doable, what are the populations at greatest need, and what is doable. What can we accomplish so that we can have the greatest amount of success? And they will continue to be responsible for those projects.
Would it be feasible for public health to brief this court on the progress of these projects?
That's why I stepped forward. I was going to say when we feel like we've kind of gotten all the projects on board and gelled, we would be glad to come back with the subject matter experts perhaps, and then brief you on the programs themselves. We'd be glad to do that.
Thank you.
Any other questions? Thank you all.
Thank you.
Members of the court, if we can go to item B. This is the employee wellness incentives. Ms. Worthy.
Good morning. For just a few more minutes, I will try to be brief. Back in February, we briefed you on a presentation to enhance the incentive program for the wellness program by putting in an incentive for employees that would participate in a health risk assessment event or an annual physical. At that time, we presented three options for you. The option that the court seemed to be most interested in at that time was that if an individual did not participate, that they would have the $240 that the county gives to them in their flexible spending account withheld. There was not a formal vote at that time, but we were given guidance to move forward, research, prepare to implement the plan, and bring it back for your vote. Well, as we began to do that research and talk to some experts in the area, we discovered that the Equal Employment Opportunity Commission have gotten involved in wellness programs and have some concerns. They had a public meeting on May 8th whereby they heard from a group of panelists that have concerns about conflict with ADA, HIPAA, GINA, and some of the other Title VII, some of the other statutes that might affect wellness. What they are finding is wellness initiatives and the statutes that the EEOC enforce most commonly intersect when programs require medical exams and possibly ask disability-related questions. Well, we do not ask any disability-related questions. We actually even took all our family history-related questions out some years ago when GINA came about, and they required that we drop those out. So we are concerned about going forward with this plan of requiring or incenting people in such a strong way. Some of the information that we're reading is saying that wellness programs are okay as long as they're voluntary, but the EEOC has not defined what voluntary is. And when penalties are put in place, and there are significant penalties, they consider them no longer voluntary and that they could be discriminatory in nature. We currently offer a $50 incentive for individuals that participate in our health risk assessment. That is considered nominal and is not an issue. But as I said, we are really concerned about moving forward until the EEOC rules on this issue. And so we would like to pull back and not offer that incentive or penalty this year, see what the EEOC does, what kind of ruling they come down with, and possibly bring this back to you all for next year's cycle with our health risk assessments.
Any comments?
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Members of the court, we'll go to item D and then come back to C. Item D is capital improvements, 2006 bond package. Mr. Phillips.
Good morning.
Morning.
I'd like to update the Commissioners Court on three of the facilities management construction projects. First, the 1895 Courthouse site improvement project. The asbestos has been removed from the old Civil Courts building penthouse walls, and we're back on track. There's a bump out that's on the old Civil Courts building. It's about 10 feet away from our historic courthouse. That bump out is being carefully dismantled by hand, and that should finish up this week. And next week, there's going to be a crane in so they can fly out the concrete encased steel I-beams. That's the skeleton out there that you see now. After that, Sadalco will bring in a large, long-reach excavator with jaws on it that will tear into the old Civil Courts building and eat it like an apple. That crane will be on site, be working 7 days a week for 6 to 8 weeks. Please be advised that we discovered some additional asbestos that was behind a plaster wall and encased in a clay tile plumbing chase. It was on some steam pipe. Also, we found some asbestos that was below grade on the basement walls. That asbestos removal will not impede the demolition and is not in the critical path of the demolition of the courthouse, of the old Civil Courts building, However, once we start our water tank installation, we may have to add a few days. The demolition should be complete, and the work should be complete in November, and we'll be bidding the restoration of the west elevation this August. Moving on to the Civil Courts building project, the concrete structure will top out this week when the contractor pours the last of the 14,000 cubic feet of concrete to create the superstructure. This particular project, the substantial completion, is scheduled for December of 2014 with a move-in of the first quarter of calendar year 2015. Moving on to our 96-year-old building on the corner of Belknap and Houston Streets, which is our criminal justice building. We are in the process of placing some covered walkways on the back side and the sides of the building to protect folks from the possible delamination of terracotta tile from the upper reaches of the exterior skin. A few weeks ago, we had a large piece of the terracotta tile. When I say large, it was large, and it fell into the parking lot and didn't hurt anybody or hit anything, but we have now also shut that parking lot down. Unlike our new Civil Courts building, the old Criminal Justice building does not have any brick expansion joints. Our new Civil Courts building has the brick expansion joints on every floor and every 30 feet vertical. The old 96-year-old building does not have any, which through almost a century of thermal expansion and contraction, the brick has severely cracked, which has allowed water to get behind the brick and rust out what was used to be the steel brick angles that held up the brick. And now there are no steel brick angles, and the only thing holding up the brick is the brick itself through gravity. It was our original plan to deal with this exterior skin problem when we moved out the CSCD folks from 200 and moving possibly to the 350 building after we bought it and renovated it. And also we were going to deal with this at the time that we were going to demolish the old 300 original jail building. I don't think we can wait. We have put in $375,000 in professional services for next year's budget to move forward with hiring and engaging professional services to design the replacement of the exterior skin, which will include the brick, terracotta, and window system. I believe that the cost of the project to replace the exterior skin will be the order of magnitude of $5 million to $7 million, and that depends on whether or not we decide at that time to go ahead and bite the bullet and remove the sky bridge that connects the 200 building to the 300 West Belknap building. Until then, we will keep the walkways in place around the sides and the back of the building for protection.
Now, that's the old Brown County jail?
Yes, Commissioner, that's the 1917 model.
That's where Sparky used to be.
Is that
Yes.
considered hysterically significant?
Yes, it is, Commissioner. Yes, it is. It is a registered Texas historical landmark, which means a couple of things, which we've done some investigation and still continuing doing investigation. That means when we design, before we design a new skin for the building, we'll have to allow the Texas Historical Commission to approve that design concept and submit and give us an antiquities permit.
Good luck with that.
Also,
Yeah, well, other than that, the thing may fall down and it won't be a problem anymore.
that's true. Also, we've
We'll
just
send the bricks to Austin and let them have them.
we've uncovered, looking at all the due diligence, we're not necessarily spending that kind of money, demolishing the building. If we were try to demolish the building, we would also, it automatically invokes a 90-day waiting period or cooling off period, which gives the Texas Historical Commission time to have folks call you not to do it. So we are looking at that. We are also looking, and it will take some time, we are having a broker, real estate broker, look at it and see what the value of the property would be if the Commissioner's Court even entertained the idea of selling the property. Because not only do we have a $5 to $7 million exterior problem when we vacate the building, it's going to need some substantial work on the inside if we ever try to reoccupy it. That's all I have this morning.
That means new restrooms, elevators, and what else?
Commissioner, that's correct. There's restrooms. There's not enough restrooms in that building to serve the population in that building because there's about 160 folks. So they use the restrooms in the 300 building. They go through the Sky Bridge. Now, also we've got one elevator, and it's got some issues. None of that area really meets the latest Texas accessibility standards. It would be it could be $10 to $20 million just to renovate the inside.
I'd like to see us start looking at either selling it if somebody will buy it, or what we have to do to tear it down.
Well, I agree. I guess the one question I have is the $375,000 that you're putting in the budget for professional services. That's just to look at the exterior, right?
That's to design a replacement exterior, Judge.
And so my question is if we know that we've got all these other problems with it, why shouldn't we go ahead and budget professional services to look at the various alternatives that we're talking about? Because the exterior is not going to get us any closer to selling the building if we still have, we need to know what the costs are going to be to either sell it or renovate it and use it.
Yes, sir.
And so I'm not sure I would just be budgeting the $375 for the exterior.
Okay.
Now, because I think we're going to have to know that before we can even sell it. I think someone's going to have an idea of what it's going to cost to do something with it.
I assume we would just program that for a use of general office space, because that's generally what it's being used for today.
Do we have, if it were not being used, if we had to take all those people out of that building, where would we put them?
Well,
and do we have a space to put them?
Judge, if going along with our space master plan for our downtown Fort Worth campus, we had hoped to purchase 350 West Belknap building, and we had hoped to renovate a couple of floors to that building and move everybody in 200 Belknap and 300 Belknap. We do have some folks in there too. Move them over to 350 West Belknap on a couple of floors. Now let me tell you, each one of those floors at 350 is about 22,000 square feet. And I would think it's $250 a square foot to get it demolished and get the infrastructure brought up, because it's a 30-something-year-old building. It's going to be at least $225 to $250 just to get somebody in the building. So that's $10 to $15 million by itself.
Into
350. So that's by itself. Then we've got the skin of 200, which we've talked about now, and also the demolition of 300. Well, I do know back 5 years ago, we looked into what kind of asbestos and lead issues we had in the building. It was about $1 to $1.5 million just to do the abatement in the building. I think for that cast-in-place concrete building that's 13 stories high, it'll be millions of dollars to take it down. And of course, it's connected on either side to the buildings next to it. So we're talking tens of millions of dollars as we move forward with this process.
Okay, let me ask a question again. If we don't put the people who are in the old criminal courts building in 350 Belknap, do we have any other place within the county to put them?
Judge, I don't think we'll have enough place even in the Plaza building to put 165 people, no.
Are those 165 people primarily CSCD?
Primarily are. I've met with them in the past, see about we could push some of those people to the suburbs, and we've already maxed those there. Matter of fact, we've just finished some renovations on Miller Avenue and Alta Mesa to do just some of those things.
But we're required to furnish them space, but is there any reason why we could not look at a facility at Resource Connection?
I believe the CSCD's position would be that they're somewhat integrated into the criminal justice system in downtown Fort Worth.
All 165 of them?
I wouldn't say that, but I'd say the majority of them.
Well, I'd like for us to at least explore that and find out if we were to say, well, how many critical spots do you need downtown versus, because we could build a building for them a whole lot cheaper out of Resource Connection. And if the state wants a higher valued building and wants one downtown, maybe they can build it. I think we're required to provide them space, I don't think, I mean, we want to do something, we don't want to do something that basically makes it inefficient in working with our courts. At the same time, if we've got 100 or so folks that don't have to be downtown and we can move them out, then we might be able to find spots for the remainder in downtown, again, to keep the efficient flow of what's going on with the courts. So that may be one possibility.
Yeah, and that's what the real value was on buying the 350 building, is because it did provide at least 2 floors, possibly 3 floors of office space, that and move away from those older buildings that are just very inefficient.
Thank you.
You've just been the world of good news today. Why didn't you come up before HR?
Well, there is some good news today. The legislature adjourned yesterday, and the governor called them back into special session last night. And the good news is that the regular session is over with, and Tarrant County and the urban counties fared fairly well with this legislative session. We were able to defeat various bills that were not good policy, and we had some bills that we thought were very important that have been approved. There's been ample funding that have been provided. We have a new opportunity now in an area that we have not had in the past, where that we may be able to collect some money from the state for roads that have been demolished or at least degraded by oil and gas activities. So those are some of the good things that we saw. We saw some bills that we didn't believe were good to local government. Appraisal caps and revenue caps did not make it again.
I don't think so.
And so we think that that this has been very successful. Now, the other option or the obstacle that we face now is that we're in special session. But the good thing about that is that the governor has limited the call to redistricting, and his directive is to approve the lines that were used for this past current election. So obviously we're monitoring that, and hopefully that will be the only thing on the call, and we can then move on to do the regular business.
I got a bridge to sell you.
All I can tell you is what I hear, Commissioner. But Mr. Mendez has given you a memorandum. He is probably not going to do his final memorandum until the 20 days has expired because of the veto ability of the governor on some of these bills, and he'll give us a comprehensive report at that time. I'd be more than happy to try to answer any questions that you may have as it relates to this subject matter.
Any questions?
Your Honor, that's all we have today.
With that, then, we stand adjourned.